I check my watch. It reads 9:23 p.m., October 17th. Looks like it stopped about the time I went overboard, which is unusual because it's shockproof and should be water resistant to 150 meters. Your watch isn't broken, says Edward. Time has a way of slowing down in here, though it doesn't exactly stop completely either. Words refuse to form. Nothing in my life has prepared me for the tsunami of weirdness I've woken up to. The questions pile one on top of another, tearing apart every rational explanation. All the expectations I've built up about what constitutes reality, cause and effect, the chronological order of time, are being swept away, leaving only rubble, fragments of a sense of how things are or should be. Breathe, comforts Edward. You look as if you've seen a ghost. Am I seeing a ghost? I ask. How can you still be alive? Is this place real? A ring of static twirls and dances in my periphery. I can assure you, everything you see around you is real, Patrick. The couch you're sitting on, the wood of this structure, the books, the glass in the windows, the stones in the fireplace, all come from ships that have found their way in here over the years. For whatever reason, we're all guests here, and it's decided to be our host. What the hell are you talking about? What's this "it" you keep mentioning? You're freaking me out. Well, I'm not exactly sure what freaking you out means, but it doesn't seem pleasant, so just let me tell you directly. It is the fish, he says, and waits for a sign of recognition that doesn't come. You know, from the story of Jonah. There's some confusion about it, as the original Greek calls it a sea monster. It was translated as fish in the book of Jonah and whale in Matthew, but I happen to know it's a fish. From what I can tell, it almost never surfaces, just to pick up new guests, which, as I said, is extremely rare. And a whale would be impossibly small, wouldn't you agree? Having attended a few Sunday school classes in my time, I catch on to what he's talking about. I start to giggle uncontrollably. It feels great until my ribs remind me they've been so recently pummeled. Then I cringe and fall back into perplexity. Are you talking about Jonah and the whale? That story? Fish, corrects Edward. The one where the storm comes, Jonah volunteers to get tossed over, he spends 3 days in the whale, fish, and gets spit out at the end and decides to do what God told him to do in the first place, because he realizes, holy shit, God can find me no matter which way I run anyway? That one? A rather crude synopsis, but yes, that's the one. When I stop and focus, I can once again sense the lateral drift I noticed when I first awoke, and I know he's not bullshitting me. I really am inside the belly of an enormous fish. This is really happening. And all of a sudden my eyes refuse to stay open. A blink becomes a steady hum of nothingness, a void that has me groping towards a sense of normality, pleading that this is a dream within a dream, and I'm going to wake up on the deck of a cruise ship, burnt to a crisp, but relieved that my sunstroke-induced delusion was just that, a delusion. A little rehydration and everything will be back to normal. The fire has died down when I wake up some time later. It crackles and sends up a few sparks now and then, but pretty much all that's left is the embers' rolling glow. I've always loved watching embers. Even as a kid camping, I'd stay up late as I could, waiting for the fire to collapse and enter its last, most mysterious phase. Though they are so many spent remnants, they behave like a single entity, sharing and feeding off the total energy of the organism. They seem to communicate, play, negotiate a plan for survival, shift the shared energy from one area to another, search out the possibilities, that piece of dry leaf or grass, that could ensure further survival and growth. There's something familiar and entertaining in its struggle now that helps me accept the fact that I'm again woken up in this ludicrous scenario. Glass in hand, Edward sits in a leather armchair with a pince-nez perched on the tip of his nose. He flips through the pages of an atlas so big he has to rest it on his lap. The land masses are barely recognizable. Not that our modern maps are perfect. You just get used to seeing things in their established disproportions. Patrick, you're awake. Would you care for a cup of tea or a nip of port? He offers. Without waiting for me to answer, he pulls the cork from a hand-blown bottle, pours a generous amount into a snifter, and hands it to me. I've drunk my share of bourbon and enjoyed the odd scotch, but nothing comes close to the warmth that emanates from the first sip of this port. I could get used to this, I say, savoring the aroma. It was a few hundred years old when I got here, taken from a Portuguese trading vessel. I make it my business to maintain a collection of vintage bottles, he says, suddenly shifty. Seems a worthy pastime. What are you looking at in the atlas? I ask. Happy to change the subject, he answers. I was just wondering where you might have been picked up. Well, I say, getting up to look over his shoulder. We were traveling from Miami through the Gulf towards Cozumel, so I guess somewhere around here. I imagine the fish gets around. It can cover some amazing distances, he answers. Once, after picking up a fisherman in the Persian Gulf, we took on a merchant marine off the Magellan Pass the very next cycle. I get up and walk over to the window. I can't make out much in the distance, but there are homes close by, their forms hunched and leaning like a gathering of twilight conspirators. How do you know when a day's passed? The clocks don't work, as you've pointed out. Well, it's hard to make out just now, but the fish has provided a fungus of some sort that glows. Looks like we're in a wane right now. I'm afraid I can't tell you how long a cycle is. The usual pattern of things is turned quite upside down in here. Sleeping is an admirable avocation if you can manage it. I so rarely get tired, though I suppose I tend to nod off when I've been drinking. There's food at the bog water, if you're peckish, though we tend to get together to eat and drink more to boredom than necessity. If you're feeling up to it, you should take a look around the village, but do stay out of the bog. It's notoriously dangerous. Stay out of the bog, I repeat, as if a bog in the belly of an enormous fish were a plausible phenomenon. Do I need a flashlight? You should be just fine without. Even in a wane, there's enough light to see. The last of the port goes down, accompanied by a cascade of nerves. This isn't the mindless leisure cruise I was expecting. But then, who could anticipate anything like this? Part of me can't wait to escape the reality that's been wearing on me for so long. That was the whole point of going on this cruise to begin with. But there's another part that pulses with real fear. I mean, can this really be the fish of Jonah? And if it is, what am I supposed to do with that?